Um, Before we get started, I would like to thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and walk through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app from a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish law in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días, aviso importante del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione español. Si está utilizando la aplicación de Zoom desde su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, por favor pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, please join me in the pledge. Ready to begin? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then, Francesca, we have a quorum, correct?
We do have a quorum, yes.
Let the record reflect that all members are present with the exception of member Pickney Forrest and alternate member Musgrove. And with that, we'll move on to the the regular agenda, non-agenda public items being first. Do we have any public commenters?
Thank you, Chair. We do have three public commenters. We'll start with Blair B and then go to the original draw.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks for the meeting today. I have a couple of things to try to offer as informational. I think the first is more informational and the second is more personal and subjective. First being that I'm originally from the SF Bay area. They're having protests this weekend about the future of how to develop, how the Chevron Corporation can develop their own sense of ceasefire declarations and dialogue for the future of Israel and Gaza region. Good luck how they can do that in the Bay Area, the work that entails to ask for that from all of us, basically, I feel. So it is with that as the protests are happening this weekend, they're advising all their participants to wear masks because a new level of COVID has been happening in the Bay Area. I felt I should warn yourselves and make clear, hopefully, it seems like it's on good information, so you should pass that along to your friends and coworkers to get a sense of caution, steps of caution we need to take at this time in the following few weeks here in San Diego. Good luck in your efforts. Item 2 I wanted to consider is we've had a very difficult week and month with flood issues in the city of San Diego, and I'm really sorry that it's happened. There's a lot that's really positive that's possible in 2024 with the Tijuana San Diego border convention issues. There's just a lot of good possible stuff, and in all the conversations and needs of new funding dollars we're going to need in the next few years, I hope we can also be clear with each other the importance that we build decision making in our future communities to not harm each other. I think that's a really important concept. We have to just look at ourselves and be clear with each other as we're building our better future, and not to blame ourselves, but learn to grow from our mistakes this time. Thank you.
Our next commenter is the original draw, who will be followed by the person with the phone number ending in 731.
Yes, I wanted to say that it was quite unprofessional, David, when you and Corey are in the audience, you know, being little lovebirds at SANDAG. It would be nice if you could keep it professional, because that was out of line. And with the conditions of the roads from the storm, it's a wonder, what SANDAG's role was in that and what they haven't been doing, because the cities and the county haven't been, clearing the culverts and storm drains and, causing massive flooding in the county. And, that's a problem when people aren't doing their jobs and then they want to come and be a hero and offer up all this help because, we're here to save the day. And with, disasters and storms being very lucrative, it's no wonder why things don't get done beforehand. But perhaps that needs to be an audit you need to look into. And unfortunately, this is no offense to you, Blair, but COVID has never been isolated. So whatever they're telling people is spreading around is actually a lie. I even, if you could find out for yourself as well. I contacted HHS. Many people have contacted different entities, and there is no isolation of COVID. That means that whatever they are doing and testing for is not a disease. It's something that it's an invisible killer dot they're saying exists. They don't want to acknowledge that, yes, people do get sick, but it isn't from a virus that they are claiming is going around. And for people to be putting on masks again is even more deadly, because those are cesspools for bacteria. And they do not actually keep any kind of virus out. If you can blow smoke through it, a virus particle would be way smaller than that and would go right through it. So whatever they're saying is happening, it's because the vaccines that they're giving people are making people sick. And that's the whole point. They actually spread. They do this in herds of animals. They give one animal a vaccine and it will spread to the rest of them. So that's what's happening. It is not a new virus. It's a bio.
Our next public commenter will be the person with the phone number ending in 731. You can go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. It's Truth. Last meeting, I saw David eating a taxpayer-funded pastry, and then he tried to throw his trash with a three-pointer shot and missed. To make you feel better about that, or just to mess with you, I dedicate this song to David and Corey Schumacher.
The birds of the feather, we're always together. Used to call me your lover, and I just can't stay. So your love is right away. Your love is right away.
Isn't that a good way to wake up? Obviously, I'm just having some fun with possible conflicts of interest with the chair of the audit committee, looking at the money, and the political director of the union that is pushing yet another sales tax, taking money to fund unsustainable and inefficient public transit for SANDAG, particularly the Purple Line. Not that I'm against the Purple Line, but hey, you want to take our money, and then that kind of stuff going on. That being said, I do still like both of these characters and look forward to seeing them again, as usual. And since this is the audit committee, I'd love to see some numbers on the increased spending on security, metal detectors, x-ray machines, and whatever other totalitarian measures are being introduced. Allegedly, it's not much, but I say prove it or I don't believe it. And it's really stupid. I'm going to talk more about that topic at one future meeting. I'm not sure which one, but it's just ridiculous when you think about it, because I can go to any one city council, excluding San Diego, and I can go right up to the dais and I can talk to anybody. I could shake hands with anybody. No metal detector. I can have anything I want. So can everybody else. And there's no problem ever anywhere. But at SANDAG, it's different, isn't it? And we know the reason, because all of you, not all of you, but you know who I'm talking about, fear opposition, the people that are doing wrong, fear the opposition they will face in the future. Just like I said, that some people don't believe, but.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to member comments. Do any of the committee members have a comment they'd like to share at this point? Seeing none, I guess I don't know, Ray, if you have any updates you'd like to share. I do want to mention, I do know at the last board meeting, it might be worth sharing. At the last board meeting, Colleen had mentioned relative to the last public commenters notes that there would be additional security features starting in February. Is that just for the board meetings, or will the other new security features start applying to this meeting in the future as well? Do you know?
I believe we were considering for the board meeting, but we could do it here too.
I'm not asking for it. I just want to let the board members or the committee members be aware if it's going to happen. I don't think it's necessary, but if it was a uniform policy, I think we should share that.
You know what? I will look into that.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, with that, I also wanted to make sure I shared that, just so it's clear, for meeting efficiency purposes, I had asked for comments to be 2 minutes, but with the exception of agenda items 2 and 3, because they're very light, I asked for public comments to be limited to 1 minute. So people, as they plan their comments, they can plan appropriately. Sorry, Ray.
Oh, sorry. I just got
Yeah.
a note that we're expecting only for the board and TC to have the security
Okay,
measure.
good. So we don't have to worry about that. Excellent. And since it was brought up, I do think it's worth a brief comment on just so people are clear about what happened at the last board meeting. I just want to say that I believe that since there's a mild accusation of conflict of interest, that Corey and I have not had any communication. We don't talk outside of the board meetings. We have not met outside of the board meetings. No emails, no phones. I just know her back from when she was a council member for the city of Carlsbad. And being a human being, when I see someone being verbally attacked, I like to support them. So I just put my hand on her shoulder, and that's all it was. Nothing more, nothing really substantial there. And just want to make sure that I have no relationship with Corey whatsoever in any way outside of occasionally chatting with her at a board meeting. So just putting that on the record. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, which is the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor update.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Courtney Ruby. I'm the Independent Performance Auditor, and I will give a brief update. We have an investigation going on for SR 125, as you all know. We have 2 contract audits underway, and those are all according to the work plan. What has occurred since we were here last is I did present our expense reimbursement for travel and professional development to the board. And we also moved forward the work plan to the board for approval. And both of those items were heard, and the work plan changes revisions were approved. In relation to planning, as I sit in this seat, we're making, assessing where we are, where we need to go to ensure that we can meet the requirements of AB 805 and the work plan. And we'll have that discussion in relation to staffing today as we present the staffing analysis in addition to the organization plan. Lloyd and I are working on training, looking at, and I'll talk about that too when we look at the organization chart, make sure that aligns with our priorities. And then lastly, the whistleblower program is just that we are working to start to put a structure in place similar to what I had in Oakland. And so those pieces are coming together and everything is going very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on the OIPA's update?
We do. Thank you. We'll start with the original draw and then go to Truth.
Yeah, when you're looking at your whistleblower program, I mean, you have already, had people retaliated against for bringing out the SR 125 information. So are you backtracking and making sure that these people are also taken care of? Because now you have lawsuits coming down the pipe from that. And you continue to talk about the 125, but there's people on the 15 who have had major expenses that are on their bill that aren't theirs, that they've incurred, that they've tried to get off, that they have had no success in doing. And it doesn't seem like there's any light at the end of that tunnel. So I'm wondering, because you'll sit there and say that you're doing both because the back end is working on the same thing, but you're only mentioning the 125 and, the 15 needs to be addressed too. And people need to be able to go and have their, the mistakes that you guys have made fixed without, having to go through a bunch of, hoops and red tape just to do it, because, there's a problem. And, this is a really good way to get money by making it impossible for people to get their funds back. But when you want to get your funds back, you do that at a very rapid pace. But if it comes to the people and their money, it seems like it goes at a snail's pace and nobody gets anywhere and they just get robbed from, SANDAG.
Our next speaker will be Truth, followed by Blair Beekman.
Okay, I don't think I'm going to need 60 seconds on this one because I'm going to be honest with you. I was laughing so hard and for so long, I barely heard a thing Courtney said. I am so sorry about that. I really was laughing. David cracked me up. So all I really heard was something about protecting whistleblowers, and then I asked, "What happened to Lauren?" And I'm so lucky I'm still not laughing. I can't believe I recovered. I literally had tears in my eyes. And then you said something about Oakland, like what you did in Oakland. You know what's funny is when people first found out that you had worked in Oakland, man, was that a trigger word? So many people are like, "Oh man, you're just going to bring the same nonsense out of Oakland to here." I don't see that so far. Luckily, I think you're doing an all right job. I saw that you're taking a lot of notes, listening to the board meeting, and I appreciate that. And once again, thank you for the laughs, David. Man, what a great morning. Thank you very much. That concludes my comments.
Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I was also moved by the whistleblower protection ideas that you're working on from Oakland. I think whistleblower concepts are really important to the functioning of government, local police. There can be many ways to go about it. The idea is cooperation and counseling, and I don't know, just a feeling that we're working together to solve issues. And so I think it's really important stuff. It's really important part of tech accountability work that I'm doing. And so good luck in your efforts towards that. I wanted to quickly offer, I don't see my timer, but if I have enough time, just to thank you that you talked about security issues. For everyone who talked about security issues this morning, I hope we can talk about security. It can be a flexible subject, and it can develop and grow and change and evolve in the coming months as we work its program and try to come up with good solutions. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. It has been mentioned a couple times about the 15. And so I just think, I'm sure you will, Courtney, because this was pointed out by one of the other commenters. You take very good notes at all the meetings, but let's make a conscious decision as part of the next audit plan if that's something that should get looked into in the next year relative to the other priorities of the organization. We'll have a lot more information about the 125 at that point, and we can decide if that's something that should be rolled, looking at the 15 should be rolled into the audit plan or not. Just make a conscious decision when it comes up. Okay. Yeah, Courtney.
I would like to make one comment, and I believe that some of the recommendations would be applicable given that the operators are the same. So I think that we can encapsulate that in broad terms where we need to in the report. So I do hear your concerns from the public as well as the concerns overall on the operations on I-15. Thank you. And we'll incorporate it into the.
Thanks. I just want to put that request because last time I made some similar comments and we were also at that point just very crisp about what you're looking into right now is the 125. So yes, let's see what comes out of the 125 and then discuss what should be happening next year. David, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, question, Courtney, can you just give us a little insight as to the time frame, et cetera, for the 125 audit?
Certainly, David. We're looking to wrap up the part focused on accounting within the next month because there's deadlines that are contingent for the bond reporting. And then we'll be looking at wrapping up the next piece within the month after. So those are our goals. I think that we're going to be able to meet those. If that shifts, I will certainly report that out.
Chair, may I just offer clarification? The fast track accounts that when we talk about it as the 125, we talk about it as the 125 because that's where the operations center is. But the 15 is just an extension of the 125. So if you have a fast track, you can go on either the 125 or the 15. It's one customer base that we would have. So as we look at whether or not customers have been improperly charged, or as we look at the finances, all of the 15 customers are also in that database. They're not separated out as two different operating systems. It's just one.
So maybe what we should do is talk about the fast track audit rather than the 125 audit.
Well, yeah, at this point, we'll just see what comes out of the reports and then we can decide consciously what the next step should be. So I like that approach. Any other committee member comments? Yes, Ms. Wong-Nickerson.
So two comments and questions. So going back to the fast track audit or whatever you call it, is it very self-contained with the 15 and 125? Because fast track can be used on further north and different areas, right? So is there like a wall that actually separate 15 and 125 from all the other highway under the fast track system?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand.
So fast track, at least what I'm used to is, a bigger system that doesn't just apply to 15 or 125. It applies to many other highway. That's my understanding, right?
But
So
our customers, the ones that we charge for the fast track, yes, they can use them in other places, like if you go up to LA, but those are our customers. And so we are responsible for their accounts. And the 125 audit, if you will, I would imagine, I don't want to put words in Courtney's mouth, but it's larger than just the fast track because it also includes cash, it includes pay by plate, it includes all the different ways that you might pay when you're on the 125. We don't have those options on the 15. The 15 is either if you're carpooling, you don't pay. If you are going as a single driver and you're in the carpool lane, you can use fast track and then it will charge you. And there's a dynamic pricing that's associated with that. So that's one 20-mile stretch of lanes that we look at. The 10 miles that we look at down at the 125 has everybody who goes through there pays, and there's multiple different ways of paying. And so when we're looking at the finances and trying to balance the customer accounts and the financials, it's all of the different types of payments. It's not just the fast track, if you will. And I don't mean to overstep my bounds, but I think that what we're looking at is more holistic. Fast track is a subset of all of our payments, and the 15 is a subset of our tolling system.
okay, thanks for the clarification. So each of them actually have their own unique payment methodology or methods, and they need to be looked at slightly differently, or 15 and 125 are very similar in terms of they're
different, but they're similar in the sense that it's the same account, right? So if you have a fast track account, you can drive on the 125, you can go over to the 15 and you can drive it, and we will charge your same account.
Yeah.
Okay, but the methodology is different in the sense that if you're on the 125, it's charging you depending upon the length you're driving, like which exit you go in and you go out. And on the 15, it's dynamically tolled, meaning depending upon how much traffic there is. If you're a single occupant vehicle, then it would charge you a different amount depending upon the length that you're traveling there. So that's the system is relatively complicated in the back end, but in terms of the accounts, it's one person's account. So they'd have charges to the 15, they would have charges to the 125.
I see.
And they could have charges outside the region too. And we have charges from people outside the region who use our system, and then we have to reciprocate and pay back and forth.
I see. So the 15 will be almost a slightly different audit then, because what you've done in 125 may help inform you.
Well, once again, I would just suggest that we make that decision once we see the 125 audit and are talking about the audit plan. And
But the
get some
15
more.
is not.
I don't think I have enough information, and I want to see the audit results, and I want to get more information and then make that decision of how much difference there is, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's-
I would just make one clarification. The SR 125 is an investigation. So I just want to make sure it's very specific what we're looking at. And then, as the chair stated, once you all have that information, then we can incorporate your desires into the next work plan.
Okay. And then one more thing is the allegation about the whistleblower problem. I assume that's part of your investigation. Then you will look at that, should maybe more generic, sense, make sure that we have good process and everything in place that, this isn't an issue here. I mean, I know it's complicated, there's a lawsuit and there are a lot of things maybe, are not able to be shared at this point, so.
I would agree, Member Wong Nickerson, that it is complicated.
Yeah. But is it part of your investigation or would that be covered by the 125 investigation, or it will be totally separate? Yeah.
I think the complexity, I think that we will look at certain, so.
Sorry to interrupt. For clarification though, was there anything submitted through our whistleblower hotline with respect to this? And that's what you would be investigating, correct? If something was submitted through our fraud, waste, and abuse hotline.
Well, we're looking at an investigation based on what has occurred, right?
That I
What the
understand,
requests that have been made, but in relation to if, yes, yes, Chair, if a whistleblower came through our whistleblower program, that is when we would look at that and we would evaluate the information of the claim, we would
Right,
evaluate.
but to be
concerns
specific, in
around
this instance,
retaliation.
relative to 125,
There
outside,
was
there was
no-
nothing submitted.
Correct.
There was last year about the failure to collect tolls, which that one was investigated and
Correct.
resolved.
Yes.
But about this, there was nothing actually submitted to our whistleblower fraud, waste and abuse hotline, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't know that there's anything for us to investigate in that area. Because we didn't get a submission.
So maybe not through the hotline, but there is a allegation, right, by a former employee that, and I don't know. how
Which
many
is,
cases
that's what triggered this investigation. And so we're doing an investigation based upon that allegation.
And just as a reminder, if I may, that matter is in active litigation right now.
So we
Thanks.
resolve through that channel.
Any other comments? Nope. Okay. Oops, I just lost my agenda. So with that, we are moving on in the agenda, and I believe that takes us to item number 3. I just lost my agenda, which is going to be the staffing request from Courtney.
No, we have to approve the minutes.
Oh, we have to approve the minutes. Sorry, I did. I just gotta get back my screen. So can we have public comments on the minutes? Yeah, I just got that back up.
Thank you, Chair. We have 2 comments. The original draw, you can go ahead.
Yeah, again, so, you had the 15 and the 25 on the, last minutes. And you guys are sitting here, I feel like you don't even know what you're doing with this, because sometimes you're saying like, yeah, it's included. Well, it might be included later on. We just have to see like what happens with this. It seems a little bit negligent the way that you guys are handling that, because I don't think that you're clear across the board what you're doing. And it kind of is a revolving door, because one day you'll say that you are going to look into it, or that it's being looked into because of the 125. And then it changes to like, you might down the road if you find out things. And just the fact that this is happening because somebody came forward and you have litigation. So perhaps the person didn't go through the fraud, waste and abuse hotline, and maybe they didn't feel like they needed to, that they could go to someone and just tell them and have them start auditing it. Like they don't know that they need to actually be a whistleblower. You think that you can just be in your job and have things be mitigated without having retaliation. So you shouldn't be bringing things forward because you have litigation. It should be looked into before that. But it just shows how negligent you guys are being.
That concludes the public comments.
Any committee member comments on the agenda? Mr. Drucker.
Yes, the adjournment of the meeting did not happen at 4:40 PM.
Well, I would concur with that. I don't remember what time it was, but
My
it
guess
was-
it was 9:40 or something like that, but not 4:40. So
Apologies for the typo. I can fix that.
no. No. It was more like 5 PM or something.
no. We
Oh.
met from 9 AM. We met.
Oh,
from
9 AM to 10:40 AM. Yes, right.
So
Yes.
maybe it's 10:40.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know, but
I thought I was remembering the December meeting, that bundle of joy.
so
Yes,
I would
okay.
move approval with the amended adjournment time.
Okay, that sounds good. Do I have a second? A second by Member Dorsey and a motion by Drucker. Can we please vote? I think we know how to do this. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain.
Actually, I pressed 3, so.
That would be abstain. Yes. So that motion passes with Pinckney Forrest absent and Wong Nickerson abstaining. Now with that, we'll move on to item number 4, which is the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor Staffing Needs and Structure Report. And Courtney, take this over.
Thank you, Chair. So I am presenting our staffing needs and structure today with my team, and the overview is that there is a need for additional professional audit staff in the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor shop to ensure that we can meet our mandate. The analysis that we'll go over today includes 8 governmental organizations, and that does include SANDAG. It does demonstrate that OIPA's oversight responsibility is understaffed. With the increase in professional staff, that will give us increased capacity for maximizing productivity and organizational impact. It is in here that if you are running an effective audit shop, we should see increases in revenue, decrease in cost, improved efficiencies and enhancements in the organization. So that is ideally what we will be moving towards as being able to measure that for you all, but that is a sign of an effective shop. Key considerations for this report today is to remember that OIPA's authority is to conduct performance audits and reviews of internal controls of all departments, boards, activities, and programs of the consolidated agency. The OIPA is the official body of SANDAG to investigate also what we've spoken about today, allegations of fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. Currently, we have 5 audit professionals and in addition to myself, and we are tasked with auditing a $1.2 billion government organization, which is a regional agency that is tasked with both the function of being the regional MPO and the regional COG. So we know with that comes developing regional solutions for impacting transportation, air quality, clean energy, economic development, goods movement, public health, and public safety, housing, and more. So that is a very large portfolio. In addition to that, almost half of SANDAG's budget is related to capital improvement projects. And what we know from an audit perspective is there is increased risk from an audit perspective with capital improvement projects. So that means due to their complexity, their volume, their nature, that would be something that we really want to specialize and focus on every year. And I'll get into that more when we go to the organization chart. So today we'd like to discuss with you my request for additional staff, and we'll review the staffing analysis as part of that. And then if you are in agreement with that, requesting that you move on the recommendation to the board for the board of directors for the fiscal year 24-25 budget cycle. Included in this discussion, I have included a proposed organizational chart. It should be noted that there is a new position on the organization chart for a deputy independent performance auditor. And this is really given the OIPA's mandate and the depth and breadth of our scope of responsibilities to perform independent examinations, audits, and investigations. This is not an uncommon organizational structure for an independent performance audit function. So if we turn to the staffing analysis, you will see that there is a background and history section on page 10. I'm not going to go into detail on that. I will say that the OIPA, the Independent Performance Auditor, came about through AB 805. Prior to that, you had a management auditor. So there were not responsibilities, there was not independence between the board and the internal audit function. There was not an audit committee. With the forming of the Independent Performance Auditor's Office, those things were put in place. Now, to give you some historical perspective, and this is on page 11, in March of 2020, the Office of Independent Performance Auditor had 1 IPA, 2 principal management internal auditors, which are now called principal independent auditors, and 2 audit interns. At that time, the staffing analysis was prepared that is very similar to the one in front of you today. And the former IPA requested 5 additional positions, 2 associate auditors, 2 entry-level auditing positions, and 1 administrative support. This was presented to the board of directors for the fiscal year 2021 budget request, and the board of directors approved it. As of January 2024, 4 out of 5 of those positions have been funded. The purpose of this report today is to present our staffing needs going forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Associate Independent Auditor Michael Ryan to walk through the results briefly of the staffing analysis and take your questions. And Michael has prepared the report that you are seeing today, and Lloyd Carter provided the supervision, and Lloyd is the principal independent performance auditor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can we go to the next slide on the, so everyone can see? Thank you. So SANDAG is a very unique organization. There's not many other agencies like it, where it's a special district that does construction and has a budget of a mid-sized city. So in order to choose organizations to compare SANDAG to, we use organizations that fit most, or in some cases, all of the following criteria: that they're located within the state of California, local to San Diego, sufficiently large, have available budgetary data, and were also utilized in the previous staffing analysis. And that gave us the following agencies, including SANDAG: the County, Port, and City of San Diego, the City of San Jose, the City and County of San Francisco, and the cities of Sacramento and Oakland. Figure 1 shows the number of auditors each one of those agencies have on their staff. SANDAG has the lowest amount of auditors at 5. Next slide, please. Figure 2 and Figure 3 show the agency budgets and the capital improvement program budgets, or capital projects program budgets, depending on how they label it. I believe Figure 3 does not match what is in the current report. So if you have the report in front of you, I would want you to look at that one and rather than the PowerPoint. Figure 2 shows that SANDAG's budget of the sample is the second lowest at just over 1.18 billion. But however, our capital program budget is 566 million, or almost half of our budget, and that puts us at the third highest of the sample. Yeah.
I just want to make one clarification. Figure 3, the numbers are all the same. It's just the order of it and the color.
Yeah. So I would thank you, Lloyd. I would refer to the agenda report or the report that was handed out to you earlier, just to get a clearer, better view of it. So how do you quantify oversight? It's a pretty qualitative measurement. And so our way to attempt to quantify oversight was with the metric dollar oversight responsibility per auditor, or DORPA. It's the same metric we used in the previous analysis 4 years ago. It's calculated as follows: taking a given budget and dividing it by the number of auditors, and that gets you your oversight responsibility per auditor. So the higher the higher DORPA means the less oversight you have. So for example, if you have an agency budget of $1 billion, and you have 10 auditors, the DORPA would be 100 million. Each auditor is responsible for $100 million. Figure 4 shows that SANDAG has the third highest agency-wide DORPA of the entire sample at 237 million, which is a bit improvement from what we were 4 years ago. However, Figure 5 will show that due to our disproportionate amount of capital program, our capital programs budget being almost half the agency, us in the city of San Jose have by far the highest level of DORPA over capital improvement projects, which are, as Auditor Ruby pointed out, inherently more risky. And this is because, as Figure 6 shows, 47.8% of SANDAG's budget goes towards its capital projects program. That is actually lower than what it was 4 years ago, when I believe we were almost 60% of our budget was going to capital programs. To bring it to the next page, to look more of a focus on local agencies, to match the city of San Diego's oversight responsibility for capital program projects, we would need to have 19 auditors. And to match the county of San Diego's DORPA for CIP projects, we'd have to have 48 auditors. And the last figure just shows how much our personnel costs make up a representative of the agency. The OIPA currently holds 1.82% of the entire agency's personnel costs. For the conclusion and the proposed organization chart, I'm going to hand it back to IPA Ruby to conclude this presentation.
Thank you, Michael. So the analysis, when we are compared to other independent performance audit shops and based on the DORPA for CIP, as is demonstrated in this analysis, OIPA is understaffed. At this time, I believe that a range of 10 to 14 audit professionals is reasonable given the analysis in front of you. And I am making a request for 2 audit professionals for the budget cycle fiscal year 24-25, and then 2 for the following 2 budget cycles. This will ensure that OIPA not only meets its staffing needs, but maintains them. As we know, there's also a level of natural attrition that can occur as well. So we want to make sure that we're appropriately staffed up. The cost associated with these two audit positions is $418,000, and the proposed organization chart is included at the end of this presentation that we'll go over. I do want to make an important piece that the important risk to consider of not adequately staffing OIPA is that we are not able to provide sufficient agency oversight to meet the requirements of AB 805. So that would be the most significant risk. And then when we turn to the organization chart, which is on page 18, so you'll see here. It should be in the actual packet on page 18. You can utilize that one. And I'll go ahead and keep talking while they're bringing it up. So for the organization chart, you have the IPA. You would have me having 3 direct reports. That would be the associate administrative assistant position that was approved last time. Additionally, it would be the new deputy IPA position, would be reclassing Lloyd's position from the current principal to the deputy IPA with his vast government auditing experience, including senior management. And then it would be having the whistleblower program, the program manager, Doug DePete, reporting directly to me. And that pretty much puts us in 3 lines of having our whistleblower program. We'll talk more in a minute about a focus on contracting, and then lastly, overall operations. It places Lloyd then having direct reports of 5, which is the 3 associate independent auditors you see there, Christopher, Michael, and Crystal. And then the 2 requests for this budget cycle, which is for fiscal year 24-25, a principal independent auditor, which is the position that Lloyd would be vacating, and then a senior independent auditor. Additionally, if we are engaging Doug in working on an audit project, then he would directly report to Lloyd in those instances. So he would have Lloyd would have 6 direct reports at that point. In the preceding 2 years, then we would add 2 additional auditors. In the next budget cycle after this one, we would add a independent auditor 1 or 2 under what you see. I have the CIP contracting focus, and we would add an independent auditor 1 or 2 under the whistleblower program. In the last year of these 3 years that I'm presenting, then we would add 2 entry-level positions there, the independent performance auditor 1 or 2. So that would put us, we are currently at 9 with this staffing chart, and then with the addition, we would go from up to 11 and then to 13. Just briefly talking about the focus of the tracks I talked about. So we do believe that we want to have a very specialized track in contracting, construction contracting. So that's where you see the line from Lloyd, and then the senior independent performance auditor will have specialized training in this area to ensure, and we will be presenting that as part of the annual work plan, that we at all times will have contract auditing going on, and would be requesting that. Then we would have the whistleblower program track, as we talked about before. And then the other 2 pods, we would have in other operations. Again, a $1.2 billion organization with so many critical areas. So I'm excited to engage with you all in the risk assessment for the new work plan and looking at really what areas we can start to dig into and return value to you all and to the board. And that concludes my presentation, Chair.
Thank you. With that, we will go to public comment. Francesca.
Thank you. We'll start with the original draw and then go to Tree.
Yeah, of course, we need to be looking at the business and how it runs and audit the fraud, waste, and abuse. and you need staff to do it. But it's sad that we're going to be paying for people that believe so badly or immensely in the climate god that is ruling our world, that is driving, inflation and everybody's, pocket to be empty because it costs so much more to, save the planet. You're not going to look at things like, the fact that the air quality or the clean energy or, public health is being affected by that climate god and all the things being implemented. You're not going to be looking at the fact that, the density of the housing and taking everybody out of rural areas and, reducing urban sprawl is actually a 15-minute city, UN agenda. And so it's sad that we can pay people to come in and do these kinds of things, but not really look at the major concerns of, the fact that the air quality, it's like, we'll talk about planes and whatnot, but then we don't look at the fact that the planes are dropping chemicals upon the people. You don't look at the fact, like, we want to talk about doing sustainable mining, but we're not thinking about the fact that all of the lithium and, cobalt and things like that are being mined for, when they're being mined, it's totally toxic and to the environment, to the people. You can't recycle it. So the whole green energy scam is bogus, but you're never going to look into that. You're never going to look at it as fraud, waste, and abuse. And so we're going to pay people to, continue to play the game of, the agenda and not really set out to make sure that people's public health is good, because you would look into the radiation that these, electric vehicles and the charging stations emit and the 5G towers. We don't ever want to look at that because that's part of the agenda, and you act like, we're providing something to the people that is, better. It's like, who cares if it kills you? At least we're offering you something. Who cares if it makes you dirt poor? At least we're saving the planet. So, nothing's really ever going to get done.
Our next speaker will be Truth, and our final speaker will be Blair Beekman.
Hey there, is it true that nothing's ever going to get done? We're going to see, right? Courtney, good job not leaving dead air like a pro. Did anyone else find this term funny? Oipa gagas. Does that not sound ridiculous? I've heard that the capital improvement projects are otherwise known as wish lists, and I think that's pretty true. That means SANDAG's got the biggest wish list of all time, bigger than any Christmas list ever written. As long as the whistleblower program is tracked better than the broken toll system, it should work. I saw in the item the inclusion of investigating fraud, waste, and abuse by SANDAG staff or other stakeholders. And I'm not sure if that's actually happened, but I think you guys should start doing that more, investigating who SANDAG is doing business with, because I think that's a big part of the problem. I'm definitely in support of more auditing positions, although considering that San Francisco has 77 auditors and yet it's full of corruption, apparently more auditors does not ensure more transparency. I think that goes back to content of character, like I like to talk about. And there was $418,000 for 2 positions, $204,000 a year for each person. That's pretty high. Do you guys want to blame inflation? The associate administrative analyst underneath Courtney, is that person's job to analyze all of your notes? Well, Lloyd's getting a promotion. I have a feeling a few associate independent auditors are wondering why they're not being considered for a promotion. Oh well. As item says, SANDAG has a $1.1 billion budget. So can someone explain the $165 billion regional plan then? Because I think it makes sense why I call it a pipe dream. Yeah, you got the money. And that's also why I appreciate the addition of investigating mismanagement as a new OIPA goal. Definitely look into that more. Thank you.
Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Thanks for seeing my hand. I was a bit busy and it took me a minute to get to the raise hand feature, public comment. Thank you for noticing. I wanted to just comment that I guess this is a culmination of kind of a year's worth of work to figure out what you need for the future of the audit committee. And, what Truth said, I mean, it's possible, working with current staff, they can be familiar with practices and how things work. And a smaller staff can create a more of a tight-knit group to understand situations. I guess, did I hear you say you need to hire 2 people at a time and then another 2 people? So I guess that's not too much growth, but maybe it is just enough to carry the load and to carry on with hopefully what can be is a good overall philosophy of SANDAG auditing that I feel that I'm understanding that ran into a bit of trouble and issues that we're trying to learn how to navigate out of. So good luck in those efforts. Good luck in whistleblower protection practices. Again, the city of Oakland, they started a future of tech accountability, basically. So accountability is important. It's important how we figure that out here in San Diego for our future on many items. It's important not to harm each other when we make our community decision making, and just a simple reminder of that. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Great. Thank you. And thanks, Courtney and Michael, for the presentation. Appreciated it quite a bit. Just to add some focus around the discussion or clarity, my belief is what we're going to try to accomplish today, or your relative to your request, is the audit committee's support for funding 2 additional positions this year. And and that's pretty much it. And then we can discuss the overall organization structure, but that wouldn't actually be an official action today. Does that make sense with respect to what your request is?
That is correct.
Okay.
And in the short form, also that we would want to go ahead and initiate recruitment.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
With that, any comments from the committee members? Ms. Wong Nickerson.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say I do support, that make sure we have sufficient staff in OIPA office so that you can do the work that you need to do. From, past year, we saw that, Mary and the team were able to identify some problems and actually bring in, bring the revenue back up to where it needs to be for 125. And also, I agree that with all the different capital projects going on, and those are very, higher risk projects because they're all different probably each time. So I do have a couple questions though. One is the 500 million capital project. Is that pretty much steady every year, similar at that level, or are there a lot of, fluctuation year from year?
Member Wong Nickerson, we would have to look at to provide the year over year. I think it is, unless Ray can provide perspective on this. I think that it is fairly consistent. Is that correct?
Well, it does fluctuate depending upon the projects that we're doing. So right now, this is for the foreseeable future, for the next few years, until a large project is actually starting construction, this is probably what the budget would be. But for instance, when we were doing the Mid-Coast, we were spending $100 million a month just on that one project. And so during that year, our budget would have been larger. But what we do then is we go out to the capital markets, we borrow money, and then we spend it on construction. So right now we have Otay Mesa East is the next one in the hopper that really would, potentially increase our budget. Right, so we would go out and we would borrow money and to build that one. So you might see that in 2025. Let's say we'd see an increase, but it would be all towards one project.
Okay. But the 500 million is almost close to the floor, so we can expect that level of spending every year.
Well,
or does it go down a lot more?
It does fluctuate, but it's like we're constantly looking at bringing new projects on. So, when you take a look at our revenue from Transnet, that's about $400 million a year. There's member assessments, other fees that come in. And then with that, we have debt service because we're borrowing money. So a lot of it has to do with which projects are being built. And that's a huge variable.
Okay, all right.
I also want to note that when Michael was presenting, he talked about that this was actually a decrease in the CIP budget compared to when we said that this is half of the agency's budget, and it actually, the CIP had been more. So we know that there is a significant amount of SANDAG's efforts is going towards this.
That's great. And then the second question, because I want to make sure that, we're not like staffing just for 1 year spending, right? So,
Yes.
The second question I have is, I know some agencies, they use outside firm to do construction audit. Some agencies do it in-house. Actually, it's more expensive to hire outside firm, but the benefits, they might have some special expertise on certain type of project. There are advantages of doing it in-house because, then you have staff who is familiar with the agencies and, but they may not have the specialty. Or if you have a year that have, huge fluctuation, you might not have enough staffing and vice versa. Do you have an opinion on, how you want to address the construction audit? Do you think it's better to do in-house, outsource, or combination? Because I think that impact the staffing, decisions.
Thank you for the question. I do have strong beliefs about this.
Okay.
And that is why when you look at the organization chart, I believe that you need to have an OIPA office that is well-versed in contracting auditing, so that we ultimately need to be experts. Is there going to be specialized skills that we may need depending on what we're looking at and the issues we're finding? Absolutely. And I will always make that call that if there's somebody out there that we need as a subject matter expert to address the issues, to bring them in. I am excited about the portfolio of digging into this in a more focused manner and consistent manner, so that we are constantly in construction contract in the CIP world. I think that we can do the best service to SANDAG overall, because then you will get the overtime perspective of, are the issues corrected? What are the new issues that it will be the continuous improvement that we would hope for in a performance auditing shop?
And then one more clarification. When you say contracting, you really do mean construction, like from contracting all the way to, when the project is done, how much we pay the.
We do, but it will be focused on the contracting aspects. I just want to say, every part of it, but it doesn't, I just want to be clear, it's not contract auditing. We're not going to go out and test and be in our hard hats.
Right, not that, but you want to make sure.
Every aspect of from the beginning to the end of the project and what we can test. Absolutely, we will be testing.
Okay, including, how much the vendor, or the contractor charge, really according to the contract and.
Absolutely.
All those good stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good clarifications. Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Board Member Drucker?
Yeah, appreciate the study on this and presenting the background and the comparison. I thought that was really good. And I do support the concept of going to the board and asking for these positions. The one question I have is if 50% of our SANDAG's budget is CIP, why isn't 50% of the workforce in the audit group going to be working on contracting audit?
Great question. I think, we'll see in time, if we need to shift more resources. So this is coming out of the, out of the gate on this. So that is, there are, CIP is a high risk area. There are also so many areas when we step back from an audit perspective, when we look at public safety data, what you all hold in the portfolio, what SANDAG holds, when we look at information technology, those are some things that we talked about. So when we look at the mandate of OIPA, we have to ensure that we have coverage. I feel comfortable with right now making that track as designed in the org chart. However, it doesn't mean that I won't come back and say, these are where we need, I might come back in a year and say, right now, based on the volume of whistleblower complaints, instead of putting that entry-level position there, I'm going to put it in the contracting line. So we'll always keep you informed in relation to that, and always going back on, what is our best thinking here to get the work done and provide the greatest value.
I realize this is kind of off, not within the purview, but basically we're saying 40, this for Ray, 40%, 7% of the budget is CIP. X percent has got to be debt service, and Y percent has got to be personnel working on administrative, shall we say. Would you have that off the top of your head?
I'm sorry, I don't, but I certainly can get you that breakdown for the next meeting. Or
just send me.
Send it to you? Okay, great.
Something, but because part of the budget is debt service, which, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, is it?
I don't,
Yeah, okay.
Let's get real numbers, but, so actually 47% of the budget is more, if you just look at the operating budget per se, it's more than 47% is construction.
Pulling out debt service.
Pulling out debt service, yeah. Okay, but I appreciate your explanation and look forward to seeing how that changes over time. So with that, I will move, if you would like.
Oh, you can, yeah. Go ahead. I just see Agnes up again.
Oh, I just want to add one thing. I think that's the value that every year OIPA office will do a risk assessment, right? So some area may have a lot of spending, but if they have really good controls, maybe you don't need to spend as much time and vice versa. So I do think that risk assessment process will address, where they should spend the time on.
Yeah, thank you. And I did want to also make a couple of comments again. Thank you for this. As I said earlier, I'm very happy to see a little bit more dedicated focus than just the IPA on the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline area. I did have some concerns at how that was impacting Mary when it was just her, and as well as the backlog that was slowly getting created. So I appreciate that. I do think that I like the view of the org chart, but I do think, as you said, there may be opportunities to tweak over time, and I think we'll have a better view of what that maybe should look like by this time next year, when the regional plan will be much more formalized. At that point, it's still, we don't really know where that's going to end up, and if we do it, particularly in the context of what the approved next regional plan looks like, that might be more meaningful at that point. So I like the discussion, but wouldn't be ready to actually just say, yeah, this is the right org chart and this is the right future staffing. Just a request as well, when we come back in the future, I would be interested in seeing metrics with before and after. You showed us what, all these metrics are currently, but if we were to hire 2 more people or 4 more people or 6 more people, I'm enough of an engineer that I can kind of visualize it, but it's actually good to have it in front of you saying, okay, if we hire these 2, this is where it's going to put us. If we hire 2 more, this is where it's going to put us relative to these other agencies. So that would be good. And the other just simple request that I would have is that, it looks like the 2, relative to one of the public speakers' comments about the cost of the 2 positions for this year, it looks like the 2 positions this year are pretty senior positions. And given that, I would just like to make sure that the people that we recruit have the commensurate real-world audit experience for those senior positions. So really would like to see if we can get some well-qualified people into those positions as well. So that's my thoughts and feedback. With that, I'd certainly entertain a motion to approve this item and send the 2 requests for the 2 positions to be, plus the promotion to be included in the budget for the board.
I would move approval.
Okay, a motion by Drucker. Do I have a second? Second by Dorsey. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously with member Pickney Forrest absent. With that, we now move on to item number 5, which is a rediscussion of board policy 39 updates. And I'll give Courtney an opportunity to say a few things in a minute, but I guess I'll start with some background here too, which is particularly for member Dorsey, who hasn't been in the history of this. I just wanted to give some background, which is, a long time ago, actually, before my tenure on the board, on this committee, there was a request by the audit committee to make some changes to board policy 39, which is the board policy that oversees how this committee operates. And specifically, there were 2 requests made at that point, one of which was around the leadership, requesting at least one of the leadership members be a public member, and 2, around the term lengths of the public member, switching that to 4 years. that was brought to the board, and for a few reasons at that point in time, the board declined, and so they didn't actually accept those recommendations. So we went along for another year or so, and we decided to tackle the issue again, saying we would like to see, because there are some real concerns, and one of the driving factors was this time last year, we were faced with the possibility of losing both the board members, all three of the public members, and the independent performance auditor in a 4-month period. And we didn't think from a continuity of operations type of model, that would be a good thing. So we really thought that having some staggering or from some differences in how those appointments are made would be useful. The other thing was that most people acknowledge that it takes this SANDAG is a complex operation, takes a while to come up to speed. And so a 2-year term just seems too short for a public member. And so we made a recommendation to go to 3 years as well. And then we made some other recommendations, which hopefully you've read in the report with it. And we had those recommendations sent to the board or sent to the executive committee. It was reviewed at the executive committee in March, and they said, yes, we would like to consider some of this, but we want to do it in the context of all of the board policy updates, which then ended up being scheduled for November of last year. So it was brought up again in November and at the executive committee, along with the other board policy updates. And at that point in time, they asked that since we had a new independent performance auditor, that she take a look at it as well. And so Courtney did take a look at it, and I will let her discuss the thoughts that she came up with after her review. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So I appreciated the opportunity of being able to review the changes that had been made and did some analysis. I had looked at some other audit committees and Humboldt County and Butte County, City of Modesto, California State University, and City of San Diego to kind of look at some trends and really just get my hands around what was being presented and acknowledging all the work that had gone into it previously. So you'll see in your packet the red lines, and then the chair and I had worked on the blue lines, and those were based on the items that we looked at. And one was I felt strongly about having an outside financial expert who would come into the selection committee, both from providing that outside expertise to the process, as well as building our bench as we look forward to having additional members join us. I thought that that was kind of a win-win to have an outside financial expert. And then I believe the rest of the changes we're just more trying to flesh them out a little bit more specific, and I'll see if the chair has anything else that he would like to add.
No, that's pretty much it for that part. So at this point, I'd like to take, thank you for that, Courtney, and I'd like to take public comment on this item. Francesca?
Thank you, Truth. You can go ahead.
Oh, hello there. I heard something about somebody getting flushed out. Who is it? The whole board of directors, maybe? All right. I support 2.4, where this committee chooses the chair and vice chair for a 1-year term. We need many more 1-year terms in every position of government. Another part of the code needed, particularly for the executive committee and the board of directors, is 3.1.12 that can remove an auditor for incompetence, dishonesty, or unethical behavior. Man, would that be great everywhere too, right? I don't really understand why the number of 6 years was chosen for the term limit for a board member. I'm going to assume that it has to do with staggering the terms or something, or maybe you guys just wanted to stay longer. I don't know, but if it's related to the staggering, that's smart. The code 4.2.3, the 5-person selection committee with an upper management level staff person from SANDAG Finance is a little vague. Why can't there be a designated person with an alternate? I'm also concerned about the board of directors choosing a government financial expert. I've already seen bias in their decisions enough times to be skeptical with reason. I find the random drawing of a public member from the finalist candidates to be fun and actually pretty fair, which is unusual from SANDAG. I'm going to recommend a giant fishbowl jar, and you just write the names on paper and you just pick it out. We can add some more fun to SANDAG. Let's see if there's anything else. I didn't quite finish reading. I got like 4 more pages I didn't read through. But you didn't add too much. Yeah, okay, I pretty much read it all. So I'm going to say thanks for the fun meeting and for distracting me from working on next week's meetings that are really actually more important for me. But I'm happy to keep you guys on your toes. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, followed by Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, with the board, you want to be able to, you know, have things go in a manner where you're not just kind of getting rid of the entire board at one time and you have more time to stay on so that you can have a clearer understanding of what's going on. But like, it's a catch-22 because at the same time, you guys won't acknowledge a lot of the things that need to be acknowledged. And so, I mean, it would actually be better if it was just a revolving door of, you know, people coming through, because it would, I mean, it wouldn't be any different than what's really going on, because, you know, you like, it's always a bunch of double speak about looking into certain things. And again, I find it severely negligent. And at some point, you know, when the truth is finally exposed and people actually believe it, that what you're doing with all of this climate stuff is actually, you know, based on propaganda and nothing that is factual, because you have scientists coming forward all the time saying that carbon is the building block of life. Like, we need it. If we don't have it, then there is no life. There's no plant life. There's none of you guys. You won't exist. None of us will. But it's like, you know, we spend all this money to have people come in and look at stuff and, you know, act like they're doing a really great job. But I find it very sad to think that, you know, some significant things that are affecting the people are totally being ignored and are on, because if you have something that you want to push over the health and safety of people, because you look at it as a god and people will bow down and sacrifice anything to this climate god, you're actually sacrificing people's lives because you're not looking into the things that potentially are harming their health and their, you know, just ability to live a healthy life, because of all of the toxins and things that are being emitted and radiation and, you know, from the things that you want to offer up. So it's just sad to think that you could be doing a job that could be done better than you really are, and you just don't care.
Our final speaker on this item will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Good luck with this item and what you're trying to do as an audit committee. You know, there's just been a lot of concepts of, well, things of corruption, I guess, we've had to deal with in San Diego County over the past few years now. I really hope this can help to address problems and issues that have been arising. City of San Diego is going through their own auditing issues about the future. Should there be a separate elected office or not? It has merit. I don't know if it's the best solution, but just an overall good luck in what you're working towards. You know, it's the same with the, I keep mentioning, you know, because of the flood issues, I don't want to blame city officials of San Diego, but I think and as a part of the formula in the future of funding and how to think about issues, we have to consider the concepts. We have to base our future decision making really on not harming each other. And I think that's an important concept. We have to just really remind ourselves at this time, as important as upcoming funding will be, we have to remind ourselves we have to build our future to not hurt, but to build in peace. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll make a couple more comments and then we can open it up for discussion. I did want to note, again, in particular, since it's brought up by a public speaker, the whole concept of the random draw thing seems a little bit interesting, but and it was actually brought up when I talked about this with Courtney, the IPA as well, but there was a very specific purpose that was put in there, which is what we thought that it was important for the independent performance auditor or her delegate and SANDAG management person to be part of the process to do a good job of actually qualifying whether such a person was capable or a good person to do auditing of SANDAG or be responsible for the auditing of SANDAG functions oversight. But we also didn't want to make it look like it was possible for them to try to guide the process to a specific person. It's like, well, we don't think it's appropriate for either SANDAG management or the IPA to guide the process. So if you actually just have a pool of people that are qualified and pick a random person, then nobody can say that, hey, this thing was rigged, because it's clearly a random process at that point of qualified applicants. The other comment I wanted to make is just, and having some, just having heard some of the comments that I've that have been made from board members, I think the one area that will generate the most consternation at the board level is the elimination of the chair being able to pick the chair of this committee. And so I did ask Courtney to look into it. We did do a little, with respect to the agency. She mentioned when she did some review, she did some comparable analysis of the agencies that she picked out, which were 4, and then also looked at the Port of San Diego and the City of San Diego. And in 100% of those cases, the chair is always picked by the governing body. It's not actually selected within the committee. It's also the fact for all of the policy advisory committees inside of SANDAG, all of the other policy advisory committees, the chair is picked by the chair of the board. And so I just want to put that out there, because I do think that there's not a high chance of that recommendation being approved. And, I think it's something we should discuss a little bit, because if we could put something forward that's likely, more likely to get approved, it might just slide through. But if they're going to change something, they may open it up and start changing other things, or making dragging the process out a lot longer than otherwise could be. So I would just encourage us to consider that. I think it might be reasonable to say, well, instead of changing the current process, we say, as per one of the other speaker members' comments, is maybe just make them 1-year terms again. And, if the committee doesn't like who's been selected, it's easy to go advocate for a change after a year. But happy to hear input and just others' thoughts as well. So I'll open it up to the floor. Any comments? Ms. Wong Nickerson.
Yeah, so I appreciate your last comment. I understand that 2.4 will not be, probably will face some resistance, right? Because it's different from what it has been here. At the same time, I feel pretty strongly, actually I feel very strongly that the audit committee should vote for that, who's the chair of the audit committee. I understand there are agencies that actually, like the airport, actually the public member has to be the chair of the audit committee. Looking at, the bill 80, what's that bill number? 805. I think it's very clear the intent of that bill is to set up a audit committee with 5 members, but 3 of them are public members. I think it really emphasized the importance of public members being, have a bigger presence here in this committee. So to me, it doesn't make sense to have the board chair to appoint one. To be honest, the board chairs, I don't think she knows any of the public members here, right? And we've been very lucky. You are a good audit chair, but there's no guarantee that, we'll continue to have a board appointed chair that who understand audit as well. I mean, the public members, we have very high requirement. We need to understand audit, finance, accounting, whatever, from a long period of time. The board members who's appointed to this committee is very different, right? You just have to show that they're willing to work with the audit committee and have some understanding. So I actually feel very strongly the chair of this audit committee should be elected by this group. It could be, if we get someone like you, we might say, hey, that's fine to have a board member, or someone maybe not as strong, then it doesn't make sense to have that person as the chair. So that's my opinion here.
Other comments? David? Or
Go ahead.
Or
digesting all this, what's going on. It's too much information right now.
It's a tough decision as to whether or not the chair should be a public member or anybody on the committee versus the chair of the board of directors deciding this. I agree that probably the executive committee and the board is not going to agree with it. And therefore, would they turn around and throw the baby out with the bathwater? Because the important thing, I think, in this whole change is getting the public members to have 3-year terms. I think that's the most important thing, because right now, a majority of the public members become termed out. And that makes it difficult for us to continue to have some continuity. Although if I would turn to the public members at this point and say, if you believe that this is what we should be doing, then I will support that, going to the board, asking them for that, understanding that we'll probably be shot down. There's one other way to look at this, and that's called the hairy hand. I don't know if anybody knows that story, but chief executive asked for his portrait to be made. And so his assistant goes out, finds an artist, and the artist creates this incredible, perfect portrait of the chief executive. The chief executive says, "I don't like it." And the assistant goes back to the artist and said, "Well, if you just made his hand hairy, he would have been able to criticize it and therefore accept it." So that's the balance that we need to make here, is between, do we send something up that we think is good, and because there's a spot where they can criticize it, they will accept what we really want? Or do we understand the politics of this, which is SANDAG board wants to be able to say the chair is going to be appointed by the chair of the board. And the reason for that is, as you know, this is a political position. Ultimately, the chair has 2 duties. One is to make sure that the audits are being done appropriately, shall we say, but the other is to fathom and work with the politics of the board. And because as an elected official, they, quote, have the experience, unquote, to do that, it may make more sense. But again, I'm going to defer to the public members to see what they would like to do. And I think then we should defer to that.
Thanks for the comments. Yeah, and just to add a couple more comments relative to the qualifications or the criteria. Agnes, is like the qualification for a board member to be on this committee right now is you have to have served on SANDAG for 3 years as a board member, and that provides sort of I would say, an insight into why I think that request will be challenging. Which is, if you look again at AB 805. They did a very good thing, as you said, a very clever thing, which is to make sure there are more public members than board members. So that means no matter who's chair, the public members, if they are all agreed, rule, because they have the overriding vote authority. But at the end of the day, the role and the responsibility of the chair is to be able to communicate what the board would like and to be able to interface with the board. And so it's important to have a good working relationship with the board as well. And why I believe that, as I said, this particular request is doomed. And I see pros and cons to both sides. I can argue for either side, and like David, will be happy to go along with the will of the group here with respect to the request. And since I can see that, I see a better outcome if we take the hot potato off of the request list, because of the fact that will likely cause other things to potentially get, well, for example, last time, it just caused the whole thing to get tossed, so we could lose everything. Whereas if we focus on the other items and take the actual hot potato off, as I said, from my perspective, I can see it working either way. So I don't have such a strong opinion about it as others appear to do. But I just want to put that out there from the perspective of, the role of this. And, what I've worked really hard at is to make sure that the OIPA office remains independent. And if you look at AB 805, though, the board is the one that has the oversight. They appoint the board members, they appoint the public members, they actually approve anything that we do. And so AB 805 was written for the board to have authority here. And it's just helpful to keep that in context as we think about this. But so at that point, I don't know if there are more comments, or Ms. Dorsey, if you have any thoughts or opinions on this at this point. I realize it's a lot to take in.
A lot to take in, but however, when you made a suggestion as far as the chair being the public member, I disagree with you. I mean, just like he explained, I think it should be like him, the position that he had. It shouldn't be a public member. It's my just opinion.
No, that's what we're here for, is our opinions, to advise and discuss and debate.
I guess I have a very different opinion. Right?
Okay.
I mean, I actually do think with the background in the history of AB 805, I think I know all of our public members take this very seriously, right? Really try to exercise duty of care and also duty of loyalty to the organization too. So I think the assumption that a public member cannot be a good chair that can work with the board well, I mean, I'm not sure if that's the implication of the worry. And so I take issue with that. And I'm not saying the public member has to be the chair. I'm just saying the committee, right, that we know the committee members best should actually make an election and say who will actually represent this committee the best with the board as that liaison. I think that works better from my perspective because the committee members really know each other versus the board chair. I mean, knows the two board members, but that's it. So pretty much automatically exclude the board members. Even one of them might be the best person, in the particular moment. As I said, we're very lucky to have you, but we don't know who will be the next you, right? So I think with this change will ensure that we can get the best person in that position, from my perspective.
Yeah, understood. And just for clarity, I wasn't at all implying that a public member couldn't make a good chair. I'm just suggesting what the strengths are of various approaches. That's all.
I totally get that.
I just want to be totally clear on that.
I know it won't be an easy,
yeah,
request. Yeah.
Well, anybody care to throw a motion out on where we would like to see this go?
Would it make sense at this point to divide the issue, which is and so I'll make the motion that the chair should be determined by the audit committee.
Chair of the audit committee.
It should be chair.
I think that's what it's saying here, right?
I thought it was something in this.
Right.
There's language already written.
Right. It is there. What I'm trying to do is bifurcate this. So once we have that determined, then we can determine whether or not we go for the whole or we take that portion out. And does that make sense?
Yes, from that perspective, I mean, that's fine. I don't know that it'll change much based upon what I'm reading here, but if you would, I mean, the motion should probably be along the lines of what's before us, which is the recommended changes, any motions that we make and what's included in those recommended changes. So what you could potentially do is make a recommendation to adopt all of the changes or except with one, and then we take that one up separately. And
that's exactly what I'm doing. So
okay, so
it's basically I'll make the motion that we
sorry, I mean, I have one more question unrelated to this specific one. Can I ask that question?
Sure.
Okay, so I know that 4.2.3, the blue that you and Courtney have made some new language, right?
Yeah.
So in addition to the selection committee now, so there's another process that the chair of the audit committee, the IPA and the CFO can appoint members of the selection committee. So this is a second committee, right, that can appoint the selection committee. Is that?
Yeah, the primary gist of that was, again, originally we had the thought of having the IPA and the CFO as part of the process. But when Courtney and I discussed, they said, well, the IPA may want to delegate somebody else from the OIPA's office, and the CFO may want to delegate somebody else from the financial arm of SANDAG to be part of that committee. And so those three individuals could meet up front and just agree on who those delegates would be. But it would be pretty much, the IPA would make a recommendation, either it's going to be me or it's going to be this other person from the OIPA's office. The CFO would either say it's going to be me or it's going to be this other person from the CFO's office. And then those three would meet and decide on those two. The external member would have to be recommended by basically approved by the board, though, whoever is the external member. That was the one other change, which was we didn't have an external member before, but the current process involves using external members. They're different every time. The change that we made here is that we would appoint an external member that would serve until it was chosen to change that person again. So that was one other difference as well. But this, as I said, relative to our previous recommendation, having an external member is totally new to begin with. So, which that would have to be, just like everybody else, would have to be approved by the board.
I see. So that smaller committee with the IPA, CFO, and the chair is to determine, also including who should be that public member, or is it up to the public member of the selection committee will be selected differently, or is it by these three people? I mean, I'm trying to understand what we are talking about here.
Right.
I understand CFO want to appoint a designee. It's already in the language in the red right now because it's a CFO or the designee, and then same as OIPA or the.
Yeah, I would assume the public member would be well, again, the reason the wording is challenging is that and it was worded slightly different is because the under the current proposal, the chair of the committee could be a public member. So you might have a public member right there if we stick with the current proposal. So this language was meant to handle that, and just knowing that we would like to have one board member and one public member as part of it. But I would suggest we could probably modify the wording a little bit, just to be clear that the committee itself would pick the board member and the public member to be involved in the selection process. Does that align with our previous conversations? I would suggest relative to the concerns that Ms. Wong Nickerson's raising is we could probably tweak the language a little bit such that it was clear that this committee would be responsible for approving the board member and public member that are involved in the selection process. That's all this committee would be. And so it would come to this committee for that purpose. And I'd be happy to suggest we would tweak the language so that would be clear. And is that?
Yeah, I
is that what you're, okay.
And then the only comment I have is a little bit strange to me that to have the OIPA and the CFO be on the selection committee of the audit committee member, because the OIPA reports up to the audit committee, and then the audit committee is supposed to help the board to oversee the management. So it's a bit unusual.
Yeah, but that's what we decided last time, though. We actually before had a two-step when we talked about this last time, we had a two-step process where the OIPA and the CFO were in a first screening process and they dropped out before the selection, but then we decided that was too much. And so we just consolidated. So even our existing recommendation still has that challenge. And it goes back to, that's why we ended up with a random draw at the end.
Maybe that will counterbalance.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was the point. So relative to your comment, David, I mean, I said I could entertain a motion. If you want to bifurcate it, entertain a motion to suggest we send all items forward as proposed in the changes with the clarification I just made, with the exception of item 2.4. And that would then include everything except for the chair nomination.
So moved.
Okay. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay.
So did you understand?
Yeah, well,
Oh, no, actually, let's say it one more time then.
Yeah.
yeah, I will say, so this is basically, we're sending forward the recommendations, including what we just discussed so far. This would be so far, except for the changes in 2.4, which are the selection of the chair and the vice chair. So that would be,
So except for 2.4.
except for 2.4, because I'm following the vice chair's recommendation to bifurcate this in separate votes. Is doing that. So I'm assuming you're nervous about your second at this point. Okay. Do we?
I'm trying to think, what does that mean?
Means we will probably take another motion with respect to 2.4 after this one, or maybe some other motion. I'm just saying he's bifurcating the vote is what he's doing.
So what you're saying is we're approving everything except for 2.4?
That's the motion.
Changes?
That's the
Okay, I
motion.
second it.
You'll second that?
Separate motion to do 2.
Well, we can continue to have motions until we run into lunchtime. Or we decide we're done. Okay, so are we clear on the motion? Yeah, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Please vote. That motion passes with member Pinckney Forrest absent and member Wong Nickerson voting no. Okay, entertaining further I can't speak right now. Entertaining further motions at this point. Apologies for that. If we have further discussion.
So the further motion will be the add 2.4 as a separate motion?
You would, you will.
Why do you do that?
Okay, do we have a second for that one?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. So with that, I will call for the vote on that one. Member Dorsey, we're waiting for your vote. And that motion doesn't pass with members Dorsey. Well, it just doesn't pass. Members Dorsey and Nickerson, Wong Nickerson voting yes, and Drucker and Zito voting no. So with that, I would suggest, I think this is unfortunate. We were going to discuss this in January, and then we're missing 2 members, and now we're missing member Pinckney Forrest. So I'm entertaining thoughts. I just wanted to make sure my opinion was clear through that vote. But if we want to do it again, we could probably move it forward. But I don't know, Mr. Drucker, if you have additional thoughts.
Can you be a little bit more clear as to what you would like to do?
I want to do what the committee wants to do.
Yeah.
So
the question would be is whether or not we want to table this for right now and bring it back when we have
enough members to move it forward.
3 members to move that forward. Right?
Yeah, that's one option. Yes.
Or we can retake the vote and be unanimous on it.
Or we can suggest, have a different motion for a different change, but yes, thoughts from the public members. I mean, I have no idea. Unfortunately, I did not get any discussion out of our absent member today at the last meeting, so I have no idea what her opinions are on this particular topic.
I would like to bring it back when she's.
Okay.
We have a full committee here.
So we'll have something else for the March agenda then, Courtney, because this is the item that won't die. But I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the engagement, and thanks everybody. And so we will end up bringing that back in March again with the other one. With that, we have reached the end of the regular. Oh, what am I looking at here? Yeah, regular agenda. And I somehow ended up with the last agenda up here. That's interesting. End of the regular agenda. And we are currently scheduled for our next audit committee meeting for Friday, March 1st, 2024 at 9 a.m. I just want to let folks know that, the main item for our next audit committee meeting will hopefully be to review the outcome of the initial investigation on the SR 125 stuff. And if that's not ready by March 1st, we may have to try to hold a special meeting in March sometime instead. But we're just, we have deadlines at play, so we need to make sure this gets done in a timely fashion. We're just it's very important to get that done and get it reviewed. So if we need to have a special meeting, we'll reach out and talk to you all about it.
The deadline is an external deadline or work deadline?
The deadline is needing to get our financial audit done by the end of March, which is waiting on this. And if that doesn't happen, a lot of really bad things happen. So we're working hard to meet that deadline. But for right now, we're going to do our best to make the March 1st meeting at 9 a.m. And I hope you all have a good month and we'll chat then. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.